Hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright.
As of recording this, it's the Thursday, November 7th, after the 2024 election. Kamala Harris lost, and there are going to be a lot of open questions as to how this happened, how a historically unpopular candidate could lose after already being defeated in a previous election. It is historic for many reasons. The sway of the Senate going Republican, a possible supermajority if the House isn't held. What will happen in the future is up in the air. But how did this happen? As a white guy with a Twitch stream, I am obviously the preeminent expert on politics, so I'll give my idea as to why this happened. There were many things hanging over the Kamala Harris campaign. An economy that was not looking good despite, by corporate America's metrics, being pretty solid. But it's only good if you measure it not from the perspective of working people, but from shareholders. Real wage growth has been stagnant for over 50 years. The increases over the Joe Biden administration in wages was not because of any programs or initiative to increase wages, but because of union participation. And I will always give credit to historically walking in the picket line with workers. But that's not because of policies Joe Biden put forward. That was because of perhaps happenstance or a moment of lucidity where Joe Biden picked a good NLRB chair. But you can't tell someone who's struggling to pay for their groceries that the economy is actually doing well. The Joe Biden and Kamala Harris administration have ignored the issues, the cost of living crisis, to healthcare, to climate change, and most importantly, the genocide in Gaza. One of the biggest death knells for the Kamala Harris campaign before votes were even cast was when she went on The View and was asked, would you do anything different from the Biden administration? And she answered,
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
You could have talked about not negotiating behind closed doors between the Norfolk Southern Company and their rail unionists. Could have said in public that you are not going to deny these people what they deserve. That would have been a good strategy. Would have shown that you are on the side of workers. You could have codified Roe v. Wade for the 2 months that you had a narrow majority in all three, House, Senate, and Executive. You could have whipped your party together to meet the moment. And instead, the Biden-Harris administration sat back and let it happen so that they could use it as a campaign position, sacrificing the lives of thousands of women and allowed 64,000 unwanted pregnancies to happen due to sexual assault in the last 2 years alone. And the fact that that stat has not been brought up by the Harris campaign, has not been brought up by Biden, has not been brought up by any Democrat, that right there is why they lost. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden lost this election because they refused to meet the moment. They refused to meet any of the campaign promises from 2020. There is no public option. There is no legalization of marijuana. There is no increasing the minimum wage. You allowed 2 Democratic senators to water down all of your bills, and then both of them left the party. You failed. You failed the American people. You allowed an unpopular, previously defeated president to come back. And while bigotry of every shape and form played a massive role in this election, those are only supplements to the major issue at hand. That there is a crisis. And it's not a crisis of masculinity. It is not a crisis of American identity. It is a socioeconomic crisis. The social fabric is ripping apart because people cannot afford to live. Because climate change is bearing down on them. Because a militarized police state is being given half of their city budgets to brutalize the citizens. Because there is a genocide unfolding live stream in front of their eyes. Every neoliberal apologist for the state of Israel, every apologist for corporate America, everyone that is blaming lower social groups for why Kamala Harris just had to fuck it up, those people need to be carved out of the Democratic coalition like the cancer that they are. You cannot address these issues by telling them that everything is actually okay, just don't be racist. In order to get people to see minority groups as human beings, you have to address their material needs. Donald Trump voters in 2016 flipped for Bernie Sanders in the 2020 primaries, not because they like socialism, but because they want health care. Because they want their kids to get an education. because they know that the economy does not serve them. They have been convinced that Donald Trump, who is a billionaire, who is a capitalist, that he is somehow different, just like they have been convinced that they are somehow different from other Americans and immigrants. People adapt and rationalize very easily. We have to take advantage of that and adapt them towards an empathetic goal, and that is community.